Detective Michael Cade hated hospitals. It wasn't the smell of antiseptic or the pale corridors that unsettled him, though those things carried their own weight. It was the silence, that oppressive, sterile hush that hung in every ward, as if the walls themselves were waiting for the sound of someone dying. So when Captain Reeves slid the file across his desk that morning, Cade's jaw tightened before he even opened it. "Abandoned hospital," Reeves said, his voice flat. "St. Dymphna's, shut down in '96 after a fire in one of the wings. Security reported trespassers. Couple kids came out screaming, said they saw something. Local PD doesn't want to touch it. They want us to rule it out." Cade thumbed through the file. The black and white photo showed the crumbling facade of St. Dymphna's Psychiatric Hospital, windows shattered, the entrance chained. The report mentioned arson, a dozen patient deaths, and whispers of malpractice buried in court records. "Why me?" Cade asked. Reeves gave him a look. "Because you don't spook easy. At least, you didn't." Cade closed the file. He'd seen worse than a burned-out hospital. Or so he told himself. The hospital loomed like a corpse against the gray sky. 4 stories of blackened brick, its windows blind and broken, vines crawling up its sides like veins. The chain on the front doors hung useless, already cut. Cade pushed through, flashlight cutting a pale beam into the darkness. The smell hit him first, mold, rust, and something sour that reminded him of blood left too long in the air. The lobby stretched out, gutted and filthy. Wheelchairs lay overturned, gurneys rusted in corners. The tiled floor was cracked, littered with syringes, broken glass, and burned files. He moved cautiously, every step echoing. On the wall behind the reception desk, faint letters spelled out, "Ward 18." The arrow pointed down a dark corridor. Back at the precinct, Cade had pulled what little paperwork survived the fire. Ward 18 had been a secure wing, isolated from the rest. Officially, it held high-risk psychiatric patients. Unofficially, rumors said it was an experiment ward. Patients went in, many never came out. Cade found a basement stairwell. The flashlight beam trembled against damp walls, where paint bubbled and flaked like scabs. The deeper he went, the colder it grew, until his breath came out in mist. The door at the bottom hung open, revealing a corridor lined with reinforced doors. Patient rooms. Each had a tiny slot for food trays. He shone the light into one. A mattress, black with rot. Chains bolted to the floor. Scratches carved deep into the walls. Words etched by nails over and over. "Let us out." Cade's investigation led him to Margaret Wells, a former nurse at St. Dymphna's. She was 70 now, living in a decaying apartment filled with cigarette smoke and unpaid bills. When he mentioned Ward 18, her hands began to shake. "They told us never to talk about it," she whispered. Her eyes were sunken, her voice brittle. Those weren't patients down there, not anymore. They changed. Changed how? Cade pressed. They tested new drugs, electroshock, isolation for weeks at a time. Some lost language, others forgot how to eat, how to sleep. They reverted, not human anymore. Animals, worse than animals. Her gaze dropped to the floor. The fire should have killed them all, but she trailed off, then looked up at him with trembling eyes. "I still hear them at night, scratching." Back at the hospital, Cade couldn't shake her words. He returned to Ward 18 with heavier steps. The smell was worse now, rancid. One door hung ajar. Inside, chains dangled empty, swinging slightly, though there was no draft. The scratches on the walls were fresher than the others. The marks bled raw plaster. Cade crouched, running his hand over them, still damp. The sound came then. A faint dragging. Something moving farther down the corridor. He drew his gun, flashlight shaking. "Police, who's there?" No answer. Only the dragging, retreating into darkness. In the basement office, half collapsed under fire damage, Cade found tapes. Dust-caked, labels barely legible. He brushed one off, fed it into an old player. Static. Then voices. Patient 18-07, subject unresponsive, dose increased. A scream, inhuman, shrill, piercing through the tape. Restrain him. Christ, it's tearing through. Static again. Cade shut it off, his hands trembling despite himself. As silence fell, he realized the dragging sound had returned, this time closer. Cade backed toward the stairwell. Then he saw it. At the far end of the corridor, a shape hunched low, too long in the arms, its head tilted at an impossible angle. Skin pale and taut, hair hanging in clumps. It dragged one leg behind it, nails scraping on concrete. Its eyes caught the beam of his flashlight, milky, blind. And yet it turned toward him, sniffing the air. Cade froze. His gun shook in his hand. The thing let out a sound, not a scream, not a growl, but something broken, guttural, as if its throat had never learned human words. Then it began to crawl, fast. Cade ran. His boots pounded the floor, breath ragged, flashlight beam lurching. Behind him, claws skittered against concrete, closer, closer. He burst into the stairwell, slamming the door. But the wood shuddered as the thing struck it from the other side, again and again. He bolted up, his legs burning. At the lobby, he stumbled into the open air. Gasping, he leaned against his car, but he didn't leave. Something about the thing, about its size, its posture. It had once been human. And if one survived the fire, how many more were still down there? Back at the precinct, Cade wrote his report, but the words wouldn't come out clean. If he filed it honestly, no one would believe him. So he buried the truth. Trespassers, nothing found, case closed. But he couldn't let it go. At night, he listened to the tape again and again. The screams burned into him. On the 7th night, he heard something new. At the end of the tape, beneath the static, a voice whispered. Detective Cade. His blood turned to ice. He returned one final time. He told no one. The hospital waited, its windows hollow eyes in the night. The chains on the doors dangled broken. He carried kerosene, matches. He would burn it, finish what the fire decades ago had failed to do. But as he descended the stairs to Ward 18, the voices began. Soft at first, then louder. Whispers bleeding from every door. Michael. Detective. Stay with us. He dropped the kerosene. His flashlight flickered, and from the darkness, dozens of pale shapes crawled into the corridor. Arms too long, jaws slack, eyes milky white. All of them blind, all of them sniffing the air. All of them moving toward him. The tape recorder in his pocket clicked on by itself. Static filled the hall. Then his own voice, distorted, repeated from the machine. Case closed. The last match fell from his hand, extinguished on the damp floor, and the corridor swallowed him whole. Weeks later, the file sat on Captain Reeves's desk. Detective Cade had vanished. His car found outside St. Dimphner's. The hospital itself, black and silent. The report was stamped missing. And in the evidence room, the old tape recorder whirred to life on its own. Through the static came a voice, hollow and cracked, whispering over and over. Ward 18. Ward 18. Ward 18.